A Super Bowl trip changed the questions in Foxborough, but the next answers are being written far from the spotlight. Patriots Nation, listen closely. A reclamation project is fighting for permanence. A shrinking veteran market may be testing New England's nerve. The franchise corner has finally let some frustration escape, and an unpopular trade may carry a purpose hidden inside the depth chart. None of these threads stands alone. Together they reveal how Mike Vrabel and the front office are protecting a roster that can no longer think like a rebuild. If you agree that details decide seasons, hit like and come with me. Start inside the defensive line room, where one of the least glamorous roster battles may tell us more about Vrabel's program than another August highlight ever could. Leonard Taylor III arrived in New England midway through the 2025 season after spending his first year and a half with the Jets. By then, his football story had already taken the long route. 5-star recruit, 3 seasons at Miami, honorable All-ACC recognition, then silence through every round of the NFL draft. That silence could have buried him. Instead, it pushed him into a league where nothing would be handed to him, and eventually into the exact kind of fight this staff respects. Taylor now enters opening day at 24 years old with 23 regular season and playoff appearances, 36 tackles, and 1.5 sacks. Those numbers do not buy him a roster spot. His value lives in the tools New England can still shape and the role this staff can still define. At roughly 6'3" and 305 pounds, with long arms and enough movement to attack laterally or climb upfield, he can threaten a gap before an offensive lineman settles. His first punch carries force. His motor keeps a rep alive after the clean wind disappears. For an interior rotation, that versatility is real currency. The private evaluation, though, will not be built from his best clips. Coaches will watch what happens when the game becomes ugly and a guard gets underneath him. Taylor has played too high, surrendered leverage, and struggled to control his gap consistently against the run. His rush plan can lose organization after first contact. That is the dividing line between an intriguing athlete and a dependable Patriot. Can he turn physical tools into repeatable responsibility? I am pulling for him, and not because every underdog deserves a sentimental roster spot. Taylor represents something bigger. New England went from back-to-back 4-13 seasons to the Super Bowl in Vrabel's first year, and that kind of leap changes the ecosystem around a developing player. He is no longer trying to survive on a broken team. He is trying to earn snaps for a group with expectations, internal competition, and a defensive identity to defend. Watch how the staff uses him when the run fits tighten. If his pad level improves and his hands become more deliberate, Taylor can provide useful interior disruption without being asked to become Christian Barmore. The Patriots do not need a fairy tale. They need the next chapter to produce dependable football. And if Taylor gives them that, a quiet waiver-level addition becomes evidence that this coaching staff can find unfinished talent and finish the job. That development story matters, but it does not solve the opening forming on the outside edge. As Week 1 approaches, leverage moves away from unsigned veterans and toward contenders offering a clear role. Experienced rushers are finding homes. The pool is thinning, and New England's uncertainty around Harold Landry puts one name into the conversation: Joey Bosa. This possibility begins with timing, not a public promise. If Landry is not ready, the rotation depends too heavily on projection. Draymond Jones can create pressure. Jesus, Elijah Ponder, and the younger pieces offer upside. Asking every developing edge to become reliable at once is not a strategy. A front office that watched this roster reach the Super Bowl should check the price of insurance with real teeth. Bosa fits the football Vrabel wants. At his best, he wins one-on-one, collapses the edge, and rushes the quarterback before the secondary faces the second reaction. New England would not need the version who carried an entire pass rush. It would need a dangerous veteran in the rotation who commands respect and keeps every protection from sliding toward the same threat. Picture the weekly planning problem. Jones attacks from different alignments. Ponder and Jaylen bring fresh legs. Landry can return without becoming the only bridge between promise and production. Add Bosa, and the young players stop taking snaps because the depth chart has no choice. They play when the matchup and their development say they are ready. That is how a contender protects the present without hurting the future. Availability is the difficult part of the file. Bosa's talent has never been the mystery. Keeping him available has been the recurring concern. That should control the contract structure and the workload, not end the conversation before it starts. Late in the summer, the deal does not need to be a massive long-term commitment. If his market settles into a price that reflects the risk, New England can offer something other clubs cannot fake: meaningful snaps on a defense already built to matter in January. There is also a secondary benefit people miss. Faster pressure gives Kayshon Gonzalez more chances to attack the football instead of covering indefinitely. It lets the safeties disguise longer and arrive more aggressively. It protects the younger rushers from becoming the weekly target of every protection plan. One addition can change the geometry of the entire unit without becoming its centerpiece. So the real question behind closed doors is not whether Bosa still owns a famous name. It is whether the remaining burst, technique, and veteran presence justify a controlled bet before another contender makes it. New England does not have to chase nostalgia or bid against itself. It does have to recognize when patience has extracted enough value from the market. A team that has moved beyond rebuilding should know the difference between waiting wisely and waiting one day too long. But Patriots Nation, this is where things get really interesting. The defender who benefits most from that extra pressure is also tied to the loudest unfinished contract in Foxborough. Kayshon Gonzalez returned as a full participant for a second practice, then gave the clearest emotional signal all summer. Asked about the missing extension, he admitted the situation was frustrating before shifting his focus back to the season. That was not an outburst. It revealed more than one would have. Gonzalez has spent months acting like the foundational player the Patriots say they want to reward. He practiced when he could, kept the negotiation from consuming his work, and avoided a public spectacle. Asked whether the organization had kept its end by staying out of the media, he paused and answered, "I don't know." In a process filled with rehearsed language, that hesitation said plenty. The history explains the tension. Robert Kraft said the Patriots had offered Gonzalez the richest deal for a cornerback and any player in franchise history. The comment was meant to answer criticism over spending, but it pulled part of a private conversation into public view and made the player look like the obstacle. Reports indicated Gonzalez did not like it. Since then, other cornerbacks have reset the market, and several members of the 2023 first round have signed extensions. Elliot Wolf says the sides are still working and gaining momentum. I hope that means progress on guarantees, first-year cash, and structure, not another round of public confidence while the calendar conducts the real negotiation. Gonzalez is expected to play because he needs the season, and league rules make an absence costly. His return does not prove the friction is gone. It proves he understands his responsibility and his leverage. The Patriots must meet that professionalism with a finish. This is not a luxury contract for a familiar face. An elite outside corner changes the coordinator's menu. He can erase a matchup, free a safety toward another threat, support aggressive pressure packages, and keep one difficult down from becoming a defensive crisis. That is structural value for a team built to win now. This is the part I will defend without backing down. Gonzalez's frustration does not make him disloyal, and New England negotiating responsibly does not make the franchise cheap. But responsible negotiation needs an ending. The organization identified a rare player, developed him, and publicly described him as central to the future. Now the private numbers must catch up with the public conviction. The helicopter over his interview became an almost perfect symbol, machinery moving everywhere while the man on the field waited. Patriots fans have waited long enough. Finish the extension, remove the static, and let the defense reach week one knowing its cornerstone is protected. A team aiming for the top of the AFC cannot build the present while trapping its best defender's future inside an awkward pause. The front office has already acted decisively elsewhere, although fans hated the first impression. Kayshon Boutte was traded to Houston for safety Jaylen Reed and a 2028 seventh-round pick. A young deep threat leaving for an AFC contender feels more valuable than a distant late-round selection and a former sixth-round safety who mostly played special teams. I understand the reaction. On the surface, New England sold the brighter asset and received the quieter one. Look underneath the transaction, because roster logic rarely photographs as well as receiver highlights. Reed entered the league from Penn State with a reputation as one of the more forceful tacklers in his defensive back class. He closes with intent, wraps in space, and carries a linebacker mentality in a safety's frame. His range and zone coverage has also produced turnovers when quarterbacks test him. That combination gives Vrabel a possible dime defender who can challenge tight ends, crowd slot routes, and bring real contact to packages with extra defensive backs. There are limitations. Reed is not the smoothest lateral athlete, and his time speed does not always appear with the same urgency on film. NFL receivers can punish one false step. He may never become a full-time interchangeable safety, and pretending otherwise would miss the point of the trade. The Patriots need useful depth behind Kevin Byard and a still-developing Craig Woodson. Reed can begin as a core special teamer, learn the system, and earn defensive work through a defined role rather than an inflated label. That is where the Kayshon Boutte decision becomes a front office bet instead of a simple talent comparison. New England evaluated a receiver room with other paths to snaps and a secondary that needed another physical body. It chose fit, control, and developmental runway. The 7th rounder is a small extra chip. Reed is the actual argument. If he becomes a reliable matchup piece and special teams regular, the return will look far more intelligent than it did on the notification screen. Foxborough, answer the critics in the comments and give Reed his first assignment. Would you test him against tight ends, develop him first through special teams, or put him straight into the competition for dime package snaps? I want specific football answers because this trade will be judged by usage, not by who won the headline. Kayshon Boutte may thrive in Houston. Reed may remain depth. But Vrabel's staff saw a roster imbalance and chose the less glamorous solution. Sometimes the move that angers everybody for an afternoon is the one designed for a problem coaches have been discussing for weeks. These 4 developments point to one hidden standard. New England is now managing expectations, not collecting hope. Taylor must turn raw tools into trusted snaps. The Bosa possibility tests whether the front office can recognize a closing market window. Gonzalez's negotiation demands a decisive reward for elite professionalism. Reed has to reveal the roster logic behind an unpopular trade. Agree with this insider, Reed? Subscribe and keep tracking Foxborough with us. Patriots Nation, tell me what you think. What grade does the front office deserve for handling these 4 pressure points? And which decision could raise it fastest before week 1?